And a Detroit man who federal prosecutors accuse of supporting the Islamic State fell in love with the FBI informant that was sent to spy on him. That's according to court transcripts released just last week. Khalil Abu-Rayyan told the informant that he had planned to shoot up a nearby church, but actually never went through with it. However, transcripts of their conversations show that it was the informant who had initiated those conversations about violence several times, even though Rayyan was reluctant to discuss extremism. Now, critics say the FBI is targeting and enabling otherwise harmless people by baiting them. Rayyan says he's innocent and made up the plan because he was lonely and simply wanted to impress a potential bride. So the FBI has more than 15,000 informants used in counterterrorism, and the results of that strategy are often mixed. So to discuss these controversial FBI counterterrorism tactics, I'm being joined now by Trevor Aaronson. He's the author of The Terror Factory, Inside the FBI's Manufactured War on Terrorism, and he's also a contributor to The Intercept. Trevor, thanks so much for joining us today. First, can you tell us a little bit about what this so-called honeypot tactic is?
Sure. So in the case of Khalil Abu-Rayyan, he was approached on Twitter by a woman portraying herself by the name Jana Bride, who said she was from Syria and that her former husband, or her late fiance, had died in an airstrike in Syria. And over the course of an series of online conversations, Khalil professed his love for Jana Bride and even proposed marriage. And Jana Bride, acting as an FBI informant that Khalil did not know, then encouraged that, but also tried to encourage violence and would talk about violence. And when he would say things like, for example, he'd say, I really care for you, I love you, she would say, well, I want something else, and she would refer to violence. And instead of at first saying, well, yes, I wanted violence too, Khalil would say, no, you shouldn't do that, and was actually encouraging her not to get involved in any sort of violence. And only over the course of several conversations, over the course of weeks, did Khalil finally make up a ridiculous story about how he had an AK-47 and he was planning to attack a church. And he did that only, according to a psychologist who examined him, because he was not interested so much in radicalism or terrorism. He just wanted the interest and attention of this girl, and that's what he got. And instead, the FBI ended up using her and using this man's interest in her to lure him into what has been basically a national security case for the FBI and federal prosecutors.
So kind of a tough guy act gone a little too far, it sounds like. Can you perhaps describe some of these tactics that you might find problematic that are being employed on these people that are being targeted by the FBI?
So the FBI's #1 priority since 9/11 has been to stop the next terrorist attack. And what they're looking for more than anything are possible lone wolf terrorists, or people who, without acting in coordination with a terrorist organization, might get involved in some sort of terrorist attack that might even be meager in scope, such as taking a gun and going to a shopping mall. And what they're doing is sending thousands of informants. As you mentioned, there are more than 15,000 informants working for the FBI, sending them into mostly Muslim communities and instigating, trying to find people who are interested in violence. And in the vast majority of cases where the FBI uses informants in sting operations and files terrorism-related charges, they're not finding people who have weapons, who have bombs, who have direct connections to terrorist organizations. Instead, more than anything, they're finding people who are mentally ill or lack the financial resources to acquire weapons on their own. In some of the more egregious cases, the FBI informants have offered money. In one case, outside New York City, an FBI informant offered 4 men $250,000 each if they went forward in a bomb plot. This most recent case involving Khalil Abu-Rayyan, is just another example of this egregious tactic, but a slightly different flavor in that they are using, instead of offering money, they are dangling the possibility of a relationship to a man who a psychologist described as lonely and a bit,
Sounds
unfit
like
for.
They describe him as kind of vulnerable, it appears, right?
Exactly. I mean, what's particularly problematic about these cases is that they're not finding the truly dangerous person who would strike tomorrow. Instead, they're finding someone who is easily manipulated by an informant.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. That was Trevor Aaronson, author of The Terror Factory and contributor to The Intercept.